Before a simulation can begin, comprehensive plans need to be made detailing precisely how the scenario will unfold. A variety of documentation must also be drawn up to facilitate the smooth implementation of the exercise, to ensure nothing is forgotten and to maximise learning opportunities. To help guide the development of the simulation, a scoping visit is essential. There is no substitute for a personal visit by design team members to the pre-selected site or sites and to meet with key people. A scoping visit has three main benefits. If training is to precede the simulation, it's important to identify the actual physical venues used to conduct training and also to assess accommodation. Secondly, to establish or strengthen relationships with key stakeholders. And thirdly, to get a first-hand knowledge of the environment in which the simulation will be held. This information will help the design team to build all other aspects associated with the exercise within the budget allocated and in harmony with stated objectives. Ideally, the scoping visit should take place at least 6 weeks prior to the simulation exercise. This provides time for careful and complete planning, preparations and possibly training. Maintaining good relationships with those in local government is crucial, and it will be beneficial to meet personally those in authority at a regional or district level. Establishing a sense of trust at this level will open up permissions at community level. Useful relationships could be formed with police forces, community leaders or local disaster coordinating bodies.
The scoping study is a key element in the design process, and that's really what builds the foundation for the simulation exercise. It helps build the relationship with the communities you're going to be working with. It helps get the right information so that you can design the simulation, and it really is an important part in building the simulation, and it really enables the success of the simulation exercise.
But it is important to identify the key people, the key organisations that would be involved, and involve them so that you can create again that realism and ensure that the relationship building is going on between those agencies and organisations, so that at the time of a real disaster they are better prepared, they know each other and they've explored the relationships beforehand.
It's vital that the design team visit the actual location where the simulation is to be held, as this will help them to envisage how the simulation might unfold and the physical resources available to the participants.
Before conducting a simulation exercise, it is important to conduct such mission, a scoping mission, to really identify the needs of the people, to identify what is already there, what plan is already there, and maybe the most important one is what kind of hazards, primary hazards to the affected, to the population.
Broadly, the emergency could take the form of an earthquake, a cyclone, a tsunami or a man-made disaster. But crucially, the emergency should be one with which the local community understands and is likely to face at some time. The scenario is a core element of the simulation and should be given careful consideration during the design process. Usually, the type of emergency and the specific location of the exercise are not revealed to participants prior to the exercise start. There are reasons for and against this approach. Maintaining a level of realism with the scenario is critical, so that community members might want to role-play and participate in a serious and appropriate manner. Many may have experienced actual disasters similar to the simulation. In fact, the SimEx may cause some stress to people who have faced a real disaster, and their feelings of fear and anxiety need to be considered and respected.
Communities are our end benefactor, so we try and include them as much as possible. And also, at the end of the day, the communities get to have a feel of ownership and participation in government-run activities.
Detailed, factual information relevant to the scenario needs to be gathered during the scoping visit. This information will be used to develop fictional news releases, statements from government or UN bodies, and specific events within the scenario. The scenario should be of a nature that unfolds and changes during the duration of the exercise, as this mirrors the reality of a genuine response. At the end of a scoping visit, it's beneficial for the design team to review their findings and begin to apply them to the overall design of the simulation.
At the end of this scoping visit, the design teams sit together and they actually finalise an action plan. This is where they look at all of the information they've gathered during that week, where they're doing the planning, the preparedness for the simulation exercise, and then they're looking from that point forward to when the simulation exercise will begin and all of the things that need to be done to ensure success. And so an action plan needs to be pulled together and then responsibility delegated to different members of the design team for those actions.
A variety of documentation needs to be developed for the benefit of both the management team and the participants. The action plan is a work plan outlining key activities from the inception of the idea for an exercise through to the evaluation of the exercise after it's completed. The action plan clearly identifies who needs to do what and by what time. It's the responsibility of the simulation director to oversee and manage this work plan with support from members of the design team. Accompanying this video is a sample action plan. The master schedule is the management team's key guide for all activities associated with the implementation of the actual exercise. It shows information like when the simulation starts and how. It shows expected events that will occur to evolve the exercise. This plan is not revealed to participants, but is vital for all personnel involved in conducting the exercise, including monitors and role players. It's an elaborate plan that provides instruction and detail for the exercise, much in the same way as a script for a play. All management team members are referring to the schedule constantly throughout the exercise. Detailed within the master schedule are the expected standards that participants should reach. These standards provide a valuable tool to enable monitors to advise and mentor participants in a consistent way. Accompanying this video is an example of a master schedule. It's well worth you spending some time to study this example.
At the moment we've just simulated a bus accident, and so that was in the schedule for after the school evacuations. It was a group of 20 students who were evacuated in the bus. The bus has crashed and caught fire, so we've had some injured students, we've had fire, we've had health and police, and that was all in the schedule, so everybody knew the time that they needed to be somewhere and what was going according to the schedule.
Throughout the exercise, messages called injects are used to communicate specific events to participants, which will require their action in some form or another. Building surprising but believable events relative to the training objectives is critical to the effectiveness of the exercise. These might be a car crash or physical injury. Injects increase the realism of the exercise and can be used to increase the pressure on participants. Injects are usually planned in the master schedule but can be spontaneous. Role players are pre-selected to play various roles in the injects. However, care should be taken with the use of injects not to overwhelm the participants with problems, which will reduce their overall learning experience.
Well, injects are just it's to simulate a real disaster situation where things happen, unexpected things will happen. People aren't where they're meant to be, or people will go missing, or people will not be where they're meant to be. So to try and simulate a real disaster, we put injects into the exercise. The role players were very good. They were screaming with pain. They had bandages on their heads. So it felt like a real situation, which was very good. They chopped down a tree this morning as part of the preparation, and one of the role players was actually lying under the trunk of the tree. So it looked like the tree had fallen on him, and he'd injured his head. So and he was screaming and in a lot of pain. So it was a very good simulation, good role playing.
prior to the CIMEX itself, it's good practice that some training will be given to all participants. This is to give them the theoretical knowledge they will need to successfully participate in the exercise. The level and amount of training offered will depend on prior knowledge and experience, but it's important to give participants a foundation for the exercise ahead. The content, level and amount of training can be discussed with the design team prior to the CIMEX occurring, but should complement the roles that the participants fulfil. For example, participants likely to be in the Emergency Operations Centre, or EOC, may need some further training on how to run this critical operation. Lastly, during and after the scoping visit, the security officer will have been developing the risk management plan. At all times during the simulation exercise, it's imperative that the health and safety of all personnel involved is taken seriously. Forethought needs to be given to all critical hazards that could potentially impact the exercise and what their likely impact would be. Associated risk reduction activities should be identified and documented in the risk management plan. Accompanying this video is an example of a risk management plan. Perhaps the most critical consideration during the exercise is what happens if a real disaster occurs, as many organisations would need to free themselves to respond. In this case, the exercise would be suspended.